posto chi ancora deve. E benvenuti naturalmente a questo evento del gruppo parlamentare ECR, il gruppo dei conservatori.
The group of European conservatives and reformists. The title of the event is Rooted Principles, Stronger Future, the heritage of St. Benedict in the values of European conservatism. Luckily, I think that you have the simultaneous interpretation, so you can I can spare you my English, so if you haven't got it, you can go to the entrance and take it.
I can take it outside, because I will speak Italian, and maybe everybody will speak Italian, so let's do it if you need it.
The distinguished guests that will come on stage right after me. So the mayor of Subiaco, Domenico Pietrini, thank you for being here. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for being here. I'm not seeing him here, but it's very easy to distinguish the abbot of the Santa Scholastica monastery, Father Meacci, but I think he'll come shortly to make some introductory remarks. But he's not coming, but we are going to see him for lunch. But right after the institutional welcome that we can have another unscheduled welcome. We have Minister Francesco Lollobrigida, who is talking to the press right now, and who surprised us by visiting us, and we are very glad about it. I think that he didn't have a long journey from his hometown to this theater, since he is native of Subiaco. Then we will have the lecture by Senator and great philosopher, Professor Marcello Pera. Thank you, Professor, for coming. And thank you for being here and to raise the standards of this meeting. So I'm going to spend a couple of words on the reasons underlying this meeting. And I'm going to do it when we'll talk about this manifesto, this charter of value, which we want to present here in Subiaco, and then to spread, starting from here, from Subiaco, like the St. Benedict rule was spread from the Santa Scholastica monastery. And it's a manifesto, a charter, which is a political one, with, I would say, capital P. So it's not something trivial or, everyday politics. But our aim here is to, let's say, rewrite our own constitution in terms of values, so that during the European elections, people would know what are the European conservatives and what do they want from the future European Union. So for these reasons, I would like to thank and welcome all the colleagues coming from many countries of Europe and who came here to enrich this meeting, this moment. Some of them will take the floor, but I would like to mention them. I would like to welcome, even though they are not here, but they'll come back in the afternoon, the Vice President of the European Parliament, Robert Zile from Latvia, then Nicolas Bay from France, Reconquête, Jorge Buxade from Spain, who is the Vice President of the ECR party, the colleagues Elisabetta De Blasis from Italy, Margarita de la Pisa Carrion from Spain, Carlo Fidanza, who had to leave this morning, Pietro Fiocchi, Chiara Gemma, Ladislav Ilčić from Croatia, Professor Krasnodiebski, whom I thank and welcome from Poland, Elżbieta Kruk from Poland, Denis Neshi, who's not here, and Herman Tersch, who will come in a few minutes. So thank you very much for colleagues for your willingness to partake in this meeting. So I believe that beyond words, what we'll take away from these 2 days will be some feelings, some emotions which are intangible, but still very important. I believe that these 2-day event will be a very positive energy that we will need in the next future. So thank you very much. I would like to thank all the representatives of the press who convene here. I would like to thank the technicians and the assistants, the organization of the ECR Group, and we're going to talk about it. And also I would like to welcome the military authorities, and I would like to give the floor to the highest civilian authority, who is the Mayor of Subiaco, Mr. Petrini. Good morning. President Pera, Minister Lollobrigida, members of the European Parliament, distinguished guests from the civil and military sector, dear citizens, it's a pleasure for me to welcome you to Subiaco on my personal behalf and on behalf of the municipal administration, and wish you all the best for this very important conference that you are going to hold here in my city. Talking about Europe and talking about the historical value of St. Benedict, and doing it in Subiaco, 60 years after the appointment by Paul VI of as St. Benedict as the saint of patron of Europe, has a very great value. So, President Pera, the history of St. Benedict in the European cultures, without roots, so your works, and seeing you on Subiaco reminds me of the great presence that honored our city of the Pope Benedict the 16th. Of which we have a very fond memory. Many of our distinguished guests probably don't know that the day before the death of St. John Paul II, Cardinal Ratzinger was here in Subiaco, who was awarded the St. Benedict Prize, and he held one of the most important lectures, which went down to history as the Letter of Subiaco. In that great lecture, retracing the reasonings done with President Pera, Cardinal Ratzinger tried to turn the Enlightenment axiom over, which said that to act as if God didn't exist. But he asked his listeners to focus and to orient the life towards the assumption of the existence of God. So you see, it was a great secular call by the greatest Christian theologist of the 20th century. The concept of the secularism of the state was never questioned by Cardinal Ratzinger, but the need to anchor Europe to the value of Christianity in Europe, what he defined the European continent, the Christian continent, so not in religious term, but in values term. So the impossibility of providing a border to Europe from a geographical perspective started from the need to define Europe on the historical evolution and the values. And Pope Benedict and Professor Pera always stated that the work of Saint Benedict was one of the historical moments, the capacity to turn a historical event over, to being able to pass on the historical and classic culture and to reinstate the centrality of the Christian thought. So that Saint Benedict rule that entails all values of brotherhood, equality, and so it's very important to talk about European values. It's important to do it here in Subiaco. That was a great moment, and the alarm that was sent by Cardinal Ratzinger, so of a Europe where everything is allowed, everything is licit, so that attempt to exclude God from public consciousness. And I'm not talking about a religious God, but a God of values. This is something that we've witnessed. And it's very important to talk about the enlargement of the European Union and how to keep European people together in peace and democracy. So if European people do not base their actions and their gaze on those values that start from Subiaco and Saint Benedict, the horizon cannot be ready for great challenges. That's the message that we've always listened yesterday, where everything started at the monastery. So for God to be credible and for the man to make God credible. So that's the message of Joseph Ratzinger. So it's the message of making God credible thanks to the European values. So I think that the Charter of Values that you're going to discuss and approve is fundamentally important for the next times, and most of all for our Europe. A Europe that, in order to find its own path, must be aware of its own great history and how this has been held together thanks to the work of Saint Benedict from Norcia and also thinkers like Joseph Ratzinger and other who made democracy and European values their compass. So thank you very much for choosing Subiaco for your presence, and I wish you all the best for this very important event. Just to ask the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Sovereignty and Forestry, Francesco Lollobrigida, to come on stage for his welcome. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister.
Thank you, Nicola Procaccini, as co-chair and the head of delegation of Fratelli d'Italia in Europe. And thank you, I would like to thank my colleagues, the MEPs, who are here in a meeting which I hope will represent a huge step forward and a change in Spain, where the government is not in line with what we are presenting here today. Thanks to Collega Fiocchi and Senator Pera, who will give us food for thought as he always does. He knows very well our topics and the values that are rooted in Christianity and politics. Whenever we lose sight of our roots and traditions, it's hard to build a new future, as a future that has a real meaning. I would like to greet the mayor and the religious authorities who are here today. Here in Subiaco, where everything was born, the tradition, the culture that stands at the very core of the European values. It's the political value of Europe was born later on. When you go to school, you learn that Europe is linked to a more geographical and modern idea, but at least here, in this part of the world, Europe was pivoting all around the Mediterranean Sea. At the very origin, through weapons and war, we managed to create what we know now to be Europe, but back then they didn't have the tools to create a strong link. Then they looked at a complex structure that was already existing back then, the Catholic Church. Well, the Catholic Church was different from what we know now. It was a vertical institution. It is now with the Pope as the head of the church. Back then it was chaotic. There were many monasteries that were linked to different saints. Well, the idea was to unify the structure and to give tasks, precise tasks. So they decided for the strongest structure with very deep roots in the values, and that was able to keep the ancient Greek and Roman culture with the scribe monks and their great job, who had the task to pass on all the books back then, but they didn't have the possibility to really create structures from, for example, agriculture. But friars were able to create the tools that allowed for the birth of what we know as agriculture, of great quality. Back then, people were attacked by brigands, and there were no order. Then the monks became Benedictine, created a hierarchy with an autarky, let's say, in the management of every monastery, but then they had a hierarchy that was centered in the place where Saint Benedict wrote the rule. There, the cultural unity of Europe was born. It was based on the ancient culture of Benedictine monks and their culture. And then everything was translated into the political field. There, Europe was born. Europe with the modern identity we are well aware of. After that, with Roman treaties, we created strategic objectives. On the one hand, the people's prosperity, on the other hand, peace. Then, over time, Europe had contradictions. It showed to be fragile and weak. We've seen it with the war between Russia and Ukraine. Europe was not able to be protagonist. And they betrayed the Roman treaties. Europe gave up on agriculture. That was the pillar in the Roman treaties in terms of production, aiming at food security, with the war and the concern towards food security, and on the other hand, the safeguard on the environment. Well, Europe denied the very core role of the Roman treaties to environmentalists who work to have the fruits of the land, farmers who work with the land. And that's the reason why in Italy we've seen very small protests, but in Europe in general they worked to ask for an environmental safeguard linked with economic sustainability. A few years ago, when European Parliament took charge, the Benedictine monks offered a statue of the saint to be hosted in a place that represented the idea of Europe. Well, they didn't want it. They gave up on the roots of Europe, and there the decline started. And nowadays we are trying to change it, to go back to the idea of people-centric Europe with the work of every nation. Europe is a place where everyone, every people has to look at their house, let's say. But then we need to be competitive in a very complicated planet. We want to play the protagonist role. We want to give our contribution. And after June the 9th, we really hope to put aside that culture and ideologies that aim at deleting the tradition and the willingness of European peoples to keep living in this tradition. Unfortunately, I have to leave early today. I have to go to Brussels together with Prime Minister Meloni. We will talk about agriculture. We want to put agriculture back at the center of the European debate. And we want to give Italy the possibility to be represented with the leader of ECR, with the idea that Europe is important and can be stronger, especially thanks to a country like ours with 3,000 years of history. And we really want to face our own responsibilities. Thank you and enjoy this two-day event. Thank you, Minister Lollobrigida. You also mentioned that also agriculture and many other things as well are part of the heritage of Benedictine abbeys. Agriculture owes its techniques to these monks, a kind of agriculture that was lost with the failure of the Roman Empire. But then, thanks to the monks, these kind of agriculture was passed on to the following generations, and we really owe everything to them and to the rule of Saint Benedict. Of course, this is the principal topic of Professor Marcello Pera. Please come on stage, and thank you again for being here today.
Good morning.
Italian very well, much better than I speak English. So if you don't mind, I turn to my only language, in which I am more or less fluent. But I'm sure that you will understand. In any case, if there are questions, I can take questions in other languages. Okay.
Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much to Procaccini for inviting me. Thank you for being here. I would like to to greet the mayor of Subiaco, who I'm seeing after some time, and I also would like to thank for his words Minister Lollobrigida, and I wish him good luck for his future endeavors. Okay, so since I had the honor of being invited to hold a conversation on conservatism and Christianity, I'll try to talk about 3 points. Quickly, I hope to be clear also. So conservatism, a concept which I care about, and the nexus, the link between conservatism and Christianity, and here is the right place to talk about this, and the current situation, well, if not faith, I would say Christian culture in Europe. So I will start with a very simple question, which is very simple for you. What is conservatism? It's simple. You give it for granted, but it's not easy actually to give a single answer. We need to get rid of some kind of definitions, like the psychological definition of conservatism. The conservative is the one who is attached to personal life situation regarding the past, who avoids novelties. This is a psychological explanation which is unacceptable because it's too broad. Everybody is attached to something. Our childhood, our culture, our environment. So this, saying that the conservative is somebody who is attached to the past, makes reference to the past, it's insufficient. Likewise, another definition, which is more sociological, is also insufficient. So saying, for example, that the conservative is one who loves a peculiar social hierarchy and who doesn't want to change it. Mostly, you say, those who love their social privileges and they don't want to forfeit them. Well, this is equally wrong, because it's too narrow. It's too narrow as a definition. The conservative is not saying that they don't want to change the existing situation. So as anybody, a conservative avoids imbalances, injustice, and it's projected to the future. But there is another definition of conservatism. Conservatism, it's a theory, it's a political theory or philosophy, and as such, conservatism conceptually opposes liberals and socialists, and it's different from one and the other. So what's the fundamental concept that conservatives have in their own political philosophy? So what tells them from the other? So there's a notion which is a key one. For the conservative, this notion is the concept of tradition. Tradition, yeah. Let's keep that in mind. The conservative believes that the difference between him and the others in the political families, so the liberals and the socialists, is that him, unlike others, wants to preserve and defend a tradition. But what is a tradition? It's a complex term, and it's also hard to grasp. But a tradition is a heritage. It's a set of customs, a set of lifestyles, a set of way of thinking, of reacting. It's a set of institutions. It's even a set of symbols. A tradition, it's a heritage within which everybody lives, which is carried over by history, and which, let's say, shapes our identity. It's like the heritage that fathers leave to their sons, and the sons preserve it to give it to their own sons. So this is the tradition in which we recognize ourselves. So the set of principles, the customs, the way of thinking, institutions, and so on and so forth. Let's have some examples. So we are going to think what is a tradition, what is a European tradition. There are some more specific ones. There's one which is specifically Italian, another one which is specifically French, but there is a specifically European tradition in which everybody can identify themselves because that tradition has a common history. For example, even though we don't think about it, in the European history, we tend to think that there are no men that are superior or inferior to the others, so that all men have the same dignity or the same value, whatever the role or social position or intellectual political position that they might take. This is a typical way of thinking in Europe. There's more. Another typical way of thinking, which is also typical of the European tradition, there is no men that are superior or inferior, but there is no real truth, and nobody that carries that real and unquestionable truth. So, truth, especially public truths, can be questioned. They are all questionable. They can all be corrected. And if you think about it, this is the way of thinking that supports a typical institution of our Europe, like the parliaments. From the Greek agora to our parliaments, the basic assumption is the same. Truths must be discussed. They are not imposed. They are decided. You don't use force to impose them. This is a typical way of thinking which unifies many European countries that share the same tradition. But there's more. There's even more. These are just examples, obviously. So it's not just public. It's not that public truths in politics can be questioned, can be discussed and corrected, but different opinions, divergent opinions, can be tolerated, especially the opinions, which are not called opinions, but faith, but religious faiths. There's a European tradition which is the tradition of religious tolerance, not because religion doesn't hold the absolute truth, but considering that religions might change, might vary among them, Europe developed a tradition according to which a religious truth cannot be imposed to another religious truth. And most of all, a political authority cannot impose a religious truth to a people. That's a tradition of tolerance. We could go on and on. Symbols. There's a symbol I always think about. And we should think about it more often. Let's take a look at a typical town. Well, I'm not saying Italian, but a typical European town. I'm thinking about a symbol which has an architectural and urban planning value, which looks like a symbol of European tradition. So how is the main square of a typical Italian or European town? So in that main square, you often find the town hall, the political authority building, the town hall in Italy, or the municipio, then you find the building of faith, which is the church in the same square, and then you have a third palace, which is the court of justice, where justice is administered. Think about it. The political authority, the religious authority, the justice and the judicial power, and they are all blind to each other. So another symbol is the blindfolded justice. Justice has the scale in their hand. So, you know, this urban structure, which is typical of our cities and of small towns, is the symbol of many things. So it's the symbol of checks and balances. It's the symbol of the separation between the political and the religious power, the respect of the religious power vis-à-vis the political power and vice versa. This is what we might say. These are fundamental elements of the European tradition that we might find in Europe, or we can find it in Spain, in France. Just travel Europe and you'll find them. Another question that I asked myself, so if this is our tradition, so this set of customs, principles, way of thinking, so why is it important for us? What's so important that we need to care about it in a peculiar way? Let's think about this question. Who are we? Who am I? What is our identity? A foreigner could meet me and ask me, who are you? Well, they don't want to know my name, but who am I? Why am I? Ask this question to a liberal. What is their answer? Well, they'll answer this way. I am a representative of the human nature. Human nature, as such, is mine, as yours, as his, hers, everybody, because there's just one human nature. And as a man, for example, I am a representative of human nature. So the answer to your question is very simple. We are all equal because we belong to the same human nature. And for liberal culture, says that there are some values that are typically human, and there are also rights that are so-called human rights. Ask the same question, who are you? To a socialist. And they'll answer, well, I am an economic subject, a producer. I am a member of a specific society where I have a job, where I carry out a job, a work. So the socialist thinks that I'm a capitalist or a worker or an exploiter or an exploited, a servant or a master. So or an owner. So it's the social and economic role is the answer to the question, who are you, for a socialist? And what does a conservative say? The liberal spoke and he said, I am a representative of human nature. I have my share in human nature, so I recognize you because we are all equal. The socialist gave an answer which is quite understandable. I work in this factory, or I'm the owner of this business, and that's who I am. My identity is there in my job, in that social role that I hold. And what about the conservative? Here is the concept that I said at the beginning. That's very important. The conservative gives an answer in terms of tradition. I am the one who inherited the hair of this tradition, of that tradition. So the conservative is not happy with just with saying I belong to the human nature. That's not sufficient. According to a conservative, that's not sufficient to characterize him. Not even the social position, the economic position. No, I mean the question, who am I? It's an identity question, and it's the same question to which you might give the same answer when you say, whose son, whose child are you? The conservative is the one who placed tradition at the core of its political philosophy, because tradition produces, and here is the second fundamental concept of conservatism, tradition produces identity. Without a tradition behind him, for the conservative, it's like a child without a family. The child knows who they are, and they feel strong, and they feel reassured of what they are because they have the parents behind him or her. So we are who we are because we are the heir of a history, of a tradition. So in that complex of customs, principles, institutions, values, I've made reference before to. So I am the child of my tradition. Tradition is not just an accessory. It's not something that I can put on and then I can leave or change tomorrow. No, tradition is an essential part of me. So if I were deprived of my tradition, I could take a leap, uprooting my tradition to enter another tradition, or utopistically thinking that we can live without tradition. So I would lose myself. I would lose my self-awareness. I would lose my self-consciousness, and I would lose my identity. Here is what a conservative is. He's the one who doesn't want to keep privileges. They don't want to keep their status. No, the conservative is in love, is convinced of tradition, because they know that tradition holds their identity. And if you don't want to lose yourself, you need to preserve that tradition if you are a conservative. So, this is an age of rights, because the liberal culture won, so it's the age of rights. So there is a human nature. Human nature has human needs, which are equal, and therefore we have human rights, which are the same for everybody. In that tradition, which is also the one that is spread in Europe and the United States, those rights, since they belong to everybody and typical of human nature, must be exported. So if there is a population which refuses them, we need to, well, not wage war, but we need to bring them back to the path of universal and human rights, which are final, they are equal for everybody, because they belong to the human nature. The conservative doesn't think, does not agree. They obviously like rights equality, gender equality, but they do not agree with the theory that there is a human nature that awards the same right. A conservative in Europe is very attached to their tradition. And a conservative considers religious faith, and especially Christianity in Europe, part of their tradition. And in the Christian tradition and culture, the idea that there are rights that are equal for everybody in every time, in every circumstances, is not an idea that can be accepted. If you allow me, if you would allow me, I would like to summarize it, but it's a great chance since we are in Subiaco, there is a mystical and Christian environment. I would like to quote St. Augustine. So I'll quote him. So I'll try to be non-attackable, because also the Catholic Church preaches the equal rights for everybody all over the world. So, and I would like to refer to an excerpt of St. Augustine. So I'm not reading it because I might bore you. So I'll just summarize it. Let's suppose that there's a people which is mature, a mature people. So it's that people that is a population that is wise and responsible. Would you think it would be reasonable for that people to have the self-determination right to choose their own rulers? Yes. And let's suppose that this people, says St. Augustine, becomes depraved, putting private interest in front of the public interest, allowing voting fraud. So he was very foresighted, and he's corrupted by the ambitious. Would you think it would be reasonable for these people to have the right of ruling themselves and then choosing the rulers that would be ambitious, corrupted, and so on and so forth? Or if there were an enlightened person in that people, wouldn't that person have the right to rule over the rest of the people? So what does this quotation mean in this example by St. Augustine? So the same assumption of equality or self-determination is a right in a context, but it's not a right in another one. So it depends on the circumstances. And here comes the conservative. The conservative who, in order to establish that something is actually right, would like to understand what's the tradition of that right. Because if it doesn't belong or it's not generated by that tradition, it's a sort of external interference. We like rights. Everybody likes rights. Well, not everybody, not every right, but we like most of them. The fundamental one, parity, equality, but not abortion. But the rights we don't like, it's not because we don't like them for a matter of taste. Think about it. We don't like them because they're incompatible with the tradition that our identity gives us. So if you take those rights and you turn them into our rights, those rights will reduce our identity. They transform us. Okay, pay attention here. But you conservatives are against the social change and innovation, new rights. That's not true. We can overturn this objection and we can overcome it. We are not against new rights. We are not against novelties. We are not against what the novelties in social context and relationships. But when we need to change a situation, we need to move to a different situation because the current situation is unjust or it's inefficient, the conservative is driven by the change which is needed, but they are guided by the principles of prudence. So change everything you wish to change, but do it gradually, because if you want to take a quantum leap, so you want to get out of your tradition and enter another tradition, you would lose your identity. Do it gradually. Do it with caution, because social change has this characteristic, so it could devoid you of your roots. So another principle of the conservative, and you can introduce every new social aspect, every right you wish, but They must be compatible with the tradition you belong to. Because if you introduce rights or principles or values that do not belong to the identity you belong to, that introduction of new rights will change tradition, and by changing tradition, they change the identity and will bring us nowhere. So, we are not refusing novelties. We want to introduce new elements, but we also want some identities that can be considered compatible with what we've been. Because if we introduce something incompatible, we lost. Another question, which is an objection, but it's more of a conclusion. You conservatives are nationalists and sovereignists. The answer, yes. But in a very precise sense. We are nationalists because we are against the cosmopolitan culture. So there's a single man all over the world with a single state, and that cancels out the differences. We are nationalists in this sense. Nation, for us, it's like the family for a child. Remove that family, and you would have left the child alone. Remove that nation, and you would have lost your roots and your identity. So we are nationalists in this sense because that's an element for defending ourselves. We refuse cosmopolitan states. There has been also a world state, for example. We are nationalists. And we are also sovereignist in a very precise sense. We do not oppose the state. We oppose those superstates that are artificial or abstract. We are not the citizens of a state that has been created from scratch, like the EU. We oppose those form of abstract state resolved by your parliaments, like yours. So how you as European Parliament like to eliminate the traditions, to create an artificial state, which is abstract, which is non-existent, then you and us will become all children of a universal state, an abstract state, and so on and so forth. So we are nationalists for, that's what I said, because the nation is our homeland and our family. So we are sovereigns because you can't force us to become the citizens of a state which is outside of history, which is completely abstract. And we come to the link between this tradition and the identity with Christianity in Europe.
Christianity is part of European tradition, and there is no doubt about it. Maybe we can challenge the use, or the utility of Christianity in European tradition. But I would like you to think about this link between conservatism and Christianity. And I would like you to think and reflect upon two typical assumptions that are typical of us conservatives, of every kind, continental, American, British, theoretical assumptions linked to the doctrine. Well, conservatives believe that evil does exist. In a society, it has always existed and it will always exist. And that's why we think that we need to build social organizations that can decrease the amount of evil crime, for example, injustice. But they don't believe, conservatives don't believe that there is such a measure or several measures for which evil can be completely eliminated and we can therefore build a perfect society. Of course, we think there is a human nature, and that very human nature we are part of. Evil is present. Social evil is present. Crimes exist. Injustice exists. We are committed in decreasing the share of evil and injustice, but we are fully aware that by eliminating one, the other one will keep existing, and the battle will go on and on. It cannot be fully eliminated. There is another assumption by conservatives. The role of politics, of our role of as political parties, is mainly a defense. We are committed in creating conditions where we can live better in order to defend ourselves better against evil and injustice. That's what politics is for. The assumption of politics to be an instrument of defense against evil, injustice, or decreasing crime. Well, in that sense, politics will never manage to create a perfect society. In other terms, politics is just the best defense possible. I am active in the political field, but compared with a socialist who aims at the complete absence of injustice and evil, I am as committed, but I am committed in perfectioning the existing institutions and organizations. Well, the first assumption is evil is always there, will always exist, and that's a political theory. We want to correct evil manifestations, but we will never be able to completely eliminate that, and that comes from the original sin. The original sin was the rebellion sin, and that cannot be fully eliminated. And that refers to what we were saying before. The second assumption, politics is a defense mechanism that aims at correcting what we have. Where does it come from? From another typical Christian idea, meaning politics is not a savior. We cannot create God's heaven on earth. Heaven and earth can live together, but the ideal heaven cannot be fully created on earth. As a conservative myself, I do think evil exists. We can modify our existence following prudence, equality, etc. But my commitment, my theory, comes from a typical Christian idea of humankind. Evil is there. And the second assumption, as conservative in politics, meaning that my job here is to create better organizations without aiming at the perfect society, utopical societies. They are dangerous because they uproot our values. I come from a second assumption, from a typical Christian idea. Politics, the secular world, cannot create God's heaven on earth, reaching perfection. So there is a strong link between my conservative opinions in Europe and Christian ideas. there is a strong link. That's why, while promoting my tradition, I'm also committed at defending my Christian faith and culture for this very reason. And not only that, there is a second reason. All those nice principles and values or rights, whatever you want to call them, conservatives are tied to, like parity, gender equality, or respect for a person, respect for human dignity. Those are nice rights. We believe in them. As liberals, believe in them. But where do these rights come from? How did we come up with them? Where did we start from? Well, if you think about it, the fact that we call them rights and values of a person, we talk about a person, that assumption, that concept of person has an origin and a collocation, which is Christianity. The person is created following God's image. That's why we call it a person. And when we talk about the person's rights, well, differences are irrelevant. Men, women, elderly, young people, they are tied to the person. So the rights and values are there. But you are accusing me of being too tied to religion. But where does this concept of person come from? You, secular European person who is fighting a battle against me, who I'm supporting Christianity and tradition. You believe in equality, parity, respect. You call them people's right. How do you explain these rights? It's not you who is attacking, who are attacking me, but it's I am asking you the reason. Why do you believe in equality? Why do you believe in parity? How can you explain that? When was it created? In 18th, 19th century, after the wars? Well, when the evangelist message came to Europe, it didn't exist before that. There were important civilizations, the Roman civilization, the Greek civilization, but these principles and values we define ourselves with didn't exist before Christianity. So you, secular person, have no reason in attacking me, who I'm defending these principles of Christian faith. If you attack me, you are attacking yourself. You are eliminating the only reason for which you believe in these principles. So that's why it's absurd to have this battle between secular people and Christian people. The secular person is not able to answer the question, who am I, what is tradition, etc. But neither can answer the question about equality, gender equality, parity, human respect. These concepts are not cannot be explained by that person, the secular person. They are part of our culture. They don't know, so they'd rather not answer the question. They rather let you follow the path towards Christianity. That's what's happening. The link, as I was saying before, between conservatism and Christianity is pretty clear, I think. If not, please ask question. And that's where we can start in order to explain the current situation. The current situation is characterized by this battle between secularism and Christian culture. There are several examples, and for those of you who are MEPs, maybe you need to hear some examples because you are fully committed to protecting rights and the rule of law. If we talk about secularism in Europe, in reality we also mean Christian values. What's prevailing, unfortunately, what is spreading now is a form of secularism that is against Christianity. I have an example to give to you. It would be funny, but it's tragic, actually, on Europe and the defense of Christianity for the reasons I have just explained. I'm not asking you to go to church, to go to the Mass, but I'm just talking about the importance of Christian culture and faith. If you also have a deep faith, go to church, but why do we need to defend such a Christian faith and culture? Because it's part of our tradition. Therefore, it allows us to have our own identity. Europe, recently, is a political construction, more or less artificial construction, that refuses to mention the Christian roots in its constitution, even mentioning that historical fact. Europe is a political organization that didn't support a commissioner just because he was claiming same-sex marriage. Europe didn't defend a Pope, Benedict XVI, who made an extraordinary lecture in his old university, supporting Christianity as the religion of logos, the thought, inviting Islamists to do the same. Europe forced the Pope to give to explain his thinking, his thought. Europe is considered to invade our other cultures. Europe allowed to go against, to oppress everything, like satire or cartoons. But whenever they are focused on Islam, well, if we talk about Christianity, Europe talks about freedom of expression, and if we talk about Islam, they condemn the situation. Europe weakly reacts to Islamic fundamentalism because they fear to be involved in what is called a civilization clash or war. It's like we don't even have a tradition or a civilization to defend. And finally, skipping some other examples, Europe is a beacon of human rights promotion and protection, and of a country who embedded the right to abortion in its very own constitution. It's not something that is linked to, it can be understood, but right to abortion is different. It's far from politics. It's far from universal rights, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, and there is also a weakening of Christian faith and culture. People don't go to church. Christian culture diminishes. Parliaments decide take decisions that are far from Christian faith and culture. And in my opinion, and you don't need to follow that, but in my opinion, also, the church itself is absorbing secularism. They justify that absorption. They justify it as an update of the Christian message. But for me, everything is turning upside down. And the situation gets harder and harder. From the one hand, we have an attack against Christianity by secular people. On the other hand, we have this weak defense of Christianity by those who need to defend it. And as a consequence, the tradition we started from to defend ourselves is getting weaker and weaker. And as a consequence, the identity gets weaker. Education, public education gets weaker, also private, as in families. And Christianity risks dying, and so does our civilization. We have a common thinking. We cannot use that as a shield. Otherwise, we would be called Nazi or suprematists. But European future is dark. And I would like to call your attention on this commitment, on this point that should be the real value of the real battle, of Europe. We don't need to be so close-minded, but we need to understand, and myself as well, how important it is to have a strong and real faith. That real faith is important, and the culture and that tradition are important for the identity we risk losing. Even elementary ideas like the rule of law. Well, some countries are threatened to be expelled from the European Union because they go against the rule of law. But if you're asked, what is this rule of law? Well, you don't know how to answer. The rule of law sees new ideas, like a country that allows for the LGBT culture to be part of it, the theory of gender, a country that believes that there is no distinction between men and women from a cultural or physical point of view. If we lose that battle, we lose everything. European elections are fundamental, not only because they are part of that battle I try to explain, but we need to win that battle. But if we lose the other battle, we really lose our civilization. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Pera. Probably some some friends or colleagues didn't know Professor Pera, and today, well, he got a way of knowing him. He's one of the most important conservative philosophers of this time, and he really enriched this event. And I think that this moment will go down in history for one of us. We will never forget this. This will be unforgettable for us. So I think that it will be useful to remember this speech, well, also for our political activity, but I think not just for that, because we are committed in politics, but we are mostly men and women who travel in time and space and who try to do it in the best way possible. So thank you very much, Professor Pera. Now, this meeting goes on with a round table to which we'll have some colleagues who asked to take the floor and to tell their opinion. So I'd like to call them on stage. Margarita de la Pisa from Spain. Ladislav Ilčić from Croatia. Thank you very much, Ladislav. Zdzislaw Krasnodiewski, Professor Krasnodiewski from Poland. Thank you very much, Professor. I'll chair this session, so please have a seat. But let's start from here. So, I would like to start by, let's say, binding this panel together. And I would like to connect this panel to the words I've just heard and the Charter values that we can hope we can spread from this event in Subiaco in order to define who we are, because this is what has been said. So our goal is mostly to say, who are we? Because if we cannot, so thank you very much, the Secretary General of ECR, Gabriel, thank you very much for coming. And Antonio Giordano, the Secretary General of ECR Party, hello. And if we can't say who we are, well, it's hard to ask them, people, to vote us on our opinions and our projects. So, we all come from a common experience at the European Parliament, which caused us some sufferance because our opinions, as you know, haven't been the majority at the European Parliament, but this motivated us. We observed over these 5 years that something positive happened in the sense of politics. This happened in many European nations, and it might also happen at the European Parliament at the upcoming elections. So, during the San Benedict feast here in Subiaco, the Patron of Europe, we wanted to claim what we've been claiming at the Parliament. So, some references that are needed to find the right path to go without a sort of compass orientating us in space and time. It's very hard to do it. It's very hard to pick the right path. This is where the compass was created. Well, here the compass has been protected, preserved and passed on. preventing it to be lost in time, because the Benedictine monks, with patience, made sure that the religious books were preserved, the Old and New Testament, but they also made sure that pre-Christian books were preserved, the so-called classical secular texts, which are one of the inputs to our European identity. But there's more. And I would like to say, to quote a friend of mine, so we owe the Saint Benedict works in many respects. So, first of all, the concept of democracy. Democracy owes to the Saint Benedict's rules in a way in which we don't imagine, because we removed that. The concept of majority, the election of the head of a community, is something that didn't start in Greece, it didn't start in ancient Rome, it didn't start in Egypt or in Mesopotamia. It started with the election of the abbot. My friend Nicola Bay, who knows the electoral system for the ballot is a Benedictine concept, is the way that they used the ballots, so the white or black balls to or spheres to elect the abbot. So we owe the Saint Benedict for the birth of hospitals, because before they didn't exist. They were military hospitals. They weren't hospitals that were open to the people. They were created here. We owe Saint Benedict also about labor, because during the Roman and the previous time, work and labor was considered something as degrading, something carried out by slaves or a very low range of society. So while otium was the pastime of the, let's say, of the right definition of citizens in Roman terms. But now the concept ora et labora, work and preach and pray, is the concept saying that the work that we carried out develops the need for creation that every human being has since they are born. So we owe much to the Saint Benedict's rule in many ways. Also some light ones. Think about music. The notes. The notes are an invention of a Benedictine monk. Benedict monks taught us also the way in which we eat, the distinction of the meals during the day. So we owe this history also in our function as MEPs, so the fact that we work within the parliament. Who invented the parliament? The Parlamentum is an invention of the Benedictine monks, so a place where people talk, people speak, and which decisions are taken. So you can understand, so you will understand how frustrating it is today at the European Parliament to walk around the aisles of and the rooms of the European Parliament and seeing that some rooms were dedicated to anybody who gave the minimum contribution to the birth of the European Union, and you won't find not even a plaque or a small reference to Saint Benedict, the patron of Europe, who invented the concept of parliament in Europe and all over the world where parliaments exist. So that's frustrating. But it doesn't mean that there are no men and women who decide to fight to defend their own identity, because they think that it's a duty not just for us, but more for those who will come after us. So to forfeit the good battle to preserve our heritage by and enriching it by with new ideas, discoveries, in order to pass it to our children, would mean to deny the sense of our existence, and this defines us. I understand that we are going to talk about other things during the electoral campaign, so we are going to talk about more actual things. But I think that over this month, separating us from the elections, in which we'll try to raise the level of our thoughts and try to explain why it is we should share our political battle, we needed this, and that moment is today. So I would like to thank you, I would like to thank my colleagues, and obviously I'll give the floor to them so that they could give us their opinions. I would like to start from my left, going to Professor Krasnodębski. So I would like to start with Margarita de la Pisa, colleague on the parliament from the Vox Spanish party, and Margarita, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Thank you very much, ECR Group, for preparing this event that inspired us, all of us, before the European election in such an important way. I also would like to appreciate the Professor Pera, because their words, I think that it's an amazing frame to know about what we are defending in nowadays, because it's true that we are facing a dark future and we need tools to go against this. And I agree with you that the first steps maybe is to go deeper in what we understand as human beings, no? As Christians, we have enormous heritage of knowledge in this sense. And we all know that our life have a transcendental meaning. It's not just what we touch, what we are. And that's why we are different, and we have to elevate, our daily, our life, the relationship with all of us, and it's why we build a society. That's why we live, because the human being need a deeper meaning in their own life, but also we need to have a relationship with each other. In society, but also in our own family. We all have a father, we have a mother. Our family is not just where we come from, it's who we are. And that's the kind of things that in the European Unions they are trying to change. For example, we have been working in a file trying to spread the idea that the filiation, the parenthood, is something that you build. It's not natural anymore. So it means that we are not part of a family. We are not members of a family. Professor Pera also talked about this conservative idea of our nations, and for us it's important because we are also members of a country. We have a heritage, we have traditions. It's true that we have European tradition, but each of us have our national traditions. In Spain, we eat paella. Here, you eat pasta, no? And I'm Spanish, and I'm proud to be Spanish, and I want to keep being Spanish, and I would like to transfer my kids the same spirit of being Spanish. I don't want to melt the idea of my identity in a Europe without concerning it in our specificities. So I will go deeper in the concept of family, because I used to talk about this in the parliament. I'm working in the Women and Equality FEM Committee and Employee Committee. And I think that is one of the most important things that we have to keep, the idea of a family, and protect the kids to have the right to have a father and a mother and be taken care by them whenever it is possible, no? Because we are facing a moment that looks like sometimes even that the kids are from the states, removing the fathers the right to care their own kids, and trying to build a society, completely artificial society, that take care all of us, and removing the concept of love. Romantic love, for example, is something forbidden for the feminists. So we have to fight to understand that the relationship with women and men is love, form a family, and then we have the gift of the kids. This is something so ambitious to work with in the parliament, but it's the first step to understand, you know, so because also we have to work in the idea of family as the best tool, not only for social, because as we know, when the family works, there are much less problems, because somebody that grew up in this warm and stability environment of a family understand what means be loved, selfless, just because you are. So this person, these kids, can spread this same love out in the society. But also, in a pragmatic way, we know that the ones that grow up in a stability can improve in soft skills like confidence, communication, flexibility, understanding of each other, and we know that the ones that have this privilege to grow up in this stability and this warm environment, safe environment, then have less problems, social integration, learning difficulties, criminals. So we have to try to fight that, to give this privilege everyone. So why we are not working in this direction? Why we see that the European Union and in my government, for example, in Spain, that is aligned with this European view, is trying to make the families weaker and weaker, no? And so we have to promote that, and also make this, understand that the family is the best tool that we have to support to finish with many of the problems that we are facing. As I said, security, soft skill, the people that grow up in this environment, less problems. Also, we are facing acute problem of natality, demographic challenge, but is also a symptom of what we are, the culture that this woke or progressive culture is without a meaning of life is promoting, no? And also with the confrontation between persons, because they don't understand the relation, inequality, reality is always one in front of others. So we are building a society where the youth don't have anymore the desire of getting married. They have fears. They are so selfish. They think that they will find their own happiness in a materialistic or pragmatic way. So the spiritual side that give us as a meaning of life is completely removed. And now we are seeing how all of these problems is becoming even clinic problems, because we see depression, suicides, addictions, especially in the childhood. So I think that all of this concept that the Professor Pera transmits us of the conservatives, that it's important to fight, because now we are suffering the consequence of melt the idea of the Christian values. We have an heritage. It's true that for hundreds of years, maybe the families transmit this heritage without words. So that's why maybe sometimes we have difficulties to defend these values, because have been something style of life, but means a true style of life that help us to reach the plenitude. And we have as a sex, as a civilization. So we have to value what we already have and fight and try to find the arguments to convince all the others, and so that the message that now this woke mainstream is transmitting is completely empty of meaning. It's an utopia that will bring the people to the dark, because they will not find a true meaning for their life. So we are here. I think that we are all aligned in this battle. We all understand how deeply it is, and also we understand that we need good results in the next elections, because maybe will be too late. I mean, 5 years more of this stream will be not anymore a mainstream. So will be a storm. Will be a storm, because the fundamentals of our society, where we built our civilization, maybe could be removed, and we are still we have still live, because I don't find the words generation. We are still a generation that live with these habits and with this normality of a family, but the next one, if we don't give them the testimony, they will not be able to build it again or to live in. So we are facing a critical moment. So I think that it's true that we need a good result in the next election. I hope that with this inspiring conference, we will find also the ideas to spread and have inspire also our voters and our not voters, and make them to vote us and have the confidence in us. Thank you very much.
Gracias.
Thank you, Margherita. Ladislav.
Thank you, Nicola, and thank you all. I would like to underline three things.
First is the link between this 5th and 6th century and 21st century. So the end of 5th century and the beginning of 6th, when Saint Benedict lived, Roman Empire was decadent. And actually he decided to withdraw from this society, to go to the cave, and then to establish the community, to establish rules. And then his monks and nuns went back to the society and actually, I would say, save civilization. It is not just that only they teached people, half of Europe, to read and write. You mentioned notes and so on. Pope Benedict XVI said that Christianity was not in such a crisis since the end of Roman Empire, as it is now. So, if we look at the Saint Benedict, what we are supposed to do? He temporarily withdrew from the society. We, as politicians, cannot go to the cave for a few years, but in the parliament is the cave, yeah. But still, I think that we have to withdraw a little bit from the society. So what it means, we cannot fully integrate in this society which is completely anti-Christian. So we have to be very careful who are our best friends, which schools our children will go to. We need community, as Saint Benedict did. We need communities. We must have meetings like this. We must establish rules like this charter, which Nicola will sign in our names. So we need some kind of, let's say, parallel society in which we shall empower ourselves to have the strength to go back to the society and to bring our values back. So this is the first thing I would like to underline. Then the second one is the fact that Saint Benedict replaced the society of pleasure, this decadent society, for the cave, for sacrifice. So there is a crucial question: what is more important for us, pleasure or sacrifice? When I speak about the sacrifice, I speak about the sacrifice as a precondition for love. So there is no love, no real love, no joyful love without readiness to sacrifice. If I'm not ready to sacrifice for my colleagues, I cannot say that I love them. For my wife, for my children, for nobody. So what we choose, is this pleasure or love? That is a crucial question. And if we choose love, it is not that we shall deny our pleasure. We have to remind ourselves this part of the gospel when Jesus made his first miracle, and he did it at the wedding, and he made wine out of water, and good wine. If you remember, they asked him, where have you been for such a long time with this good wine? Usually people give first good wine, and then when people get drunk, then they get worse one. So he made good wine so that people feel joy, so that people enjoy, that they feel pleasure. So church, Jesus, Saint Benedict, all of us are not against the pleasure, but just the pleasure which goes in line with love, which serves love. So we all always know what is the priority. The priority is love with sacrifice, and then it comes joy of life. There are people who choose pleasure and then would like to minimize sacrifice. And usually they have, when you make the final line, they have less joy than we have. And most of people don't think about that. They just, what life brings. Sometimes life brings sacrifice, sometimes life brings joys, and they are actually confused. But I think it is very important to have decision, because when you have a decision that priority is in your life is love and sacrifice, then you can do much, much more than when you are confused. And the third thing I would like to underline is, I mentioned that Saint Benedict actually saved our civilization. And he saved our civilization because of what Margarita has said, the transcendence, because of the faith. Of course, I agree with all previous speakers who said that it is not up to us politicians to promote faith. Maybe not directly, as Professor Pera has said, we are here as politicians to defend, I don't know if I will say that correctly, but to defend people from the evil, if I understood correctly. So indirectly, we can say that we also promote something what is good. But, so we are here to preserve, to defend Christian culture, tradition, historically proven ways of life. Because we know that if you are in Christianity devoted to love, to marriage, to family, to openness to life, then demography will be better than if you are selfish. So it is historically proven. It is not that we have to promote it as Christian faith, but these are values. And of course, according to this, it is also quite logical that not all of conservatives are supposed to be believers. So we need people who just think rationally and reasonably, like make a sum of historically proven ways of life and say, this tradition is good. This tradition is something what we should keep. And it is quite all right. But I think that all conservatives should be aware that there would be no Christian culture without Christian faith, without this transcendency. And I think that we all have to be aware that we have to appreciate this, and that in the future there will be, as one philosopher said, that there will be no democracy without Christianity, because this freedom is what we recognize today in the parliament is threatened by the leftists, who are always aggressive, who are always against freedom, so who are always against this human dignity, equality in dignity, and so on. So there will be no democracy without Christian culture. There will be no Christian culture without Christian faith. And when we fight for freedom, we have to consider also that first freedom is to be free from our selfishness, to be free from our vanity, from, let's say it on Christian way, to be free of our sins. So this freedom is finally the basic freedom from which all other freedoms and all loves comes, because our love to our nation, nationalism, it comes also from this basic point of life. That's why I say there is no Christian culture without Christian faith. Thank you.
Thank you, Ladislav. Professor Krasnodiecki from Poland. Thank you.
So maybe I will follow up some of your points because they're very point 1 and point 4, maybe no, or 3. The other you had third and first one. So first of all, thank you, Professor Pera, for this very interesting lecture. You eliminated very complicated relation between conservatism and Christianity, because Christianity, to be honest, sometimes was revolutionary force in the history, and we know all that there is a conservatism which is not religious, not Christian. Especially in the British conservatism, we see there's a very strong this idea. And also to say something about ECR. ECR also was founded by mostly by British and Polish delegation at this time, and British Conservative Party. I remember there was religion was not the topic of the concern. So this was not in the center of the conservatism. But on the other hand, when I read today my old friend who died, Roger Scruton, for me it was very characteristic that he in the late period of his writing returned to Church of England and so on. And this actually said confirm what you said, yeah, that there is not really conservatism without reference to Christianity, but also to faith, because without faith, there is no really Christianity. There is something, some customs, and this is. But then the next remarks is to Saint Benedict. You are right. I think that now that the figure of Saint Benedict is very, in the center of the conservative philosophy, and because of this epoch he lived, and he lived on one hand. It's a ruin of the old civilization, Romanic, and why it is declined? It is declined because the people lost their faith in the God. I don't know if you ever read the famous novel by Henryk Sienkiewicz, Quo Vadis. It was many times in film, but it shows actually this, new faith and the new truths appeared, and Petronius and so that they are just enjoy their life, but do not really believe in the ideals of the Roman empires and the gods of Roman Empire. So the question is, of course, if we can at all have a civilization without faith in some absolute principles. And maybe the problem of our civilization is that we lost this, that it is in the way this post-Christian civilization. And I have here very popular books. It was a bestseller for New York Times. The most, in review, there was such opinion, the most discussed and most important religious book in the decade. This is von Roth Dreyer, who is a chief editor of the American Conservative, and the title is The Benedict Option, a Strategy for Christians in Post-Christian Nation. So he accepts this idea that now America, United States, Americans are post-Christian. I am not sure it is true when we apply this to Italy, and I think here the stay make me, more skeptical about this thesis. But maybe it's true if we apply this thesis to United States. And he writes because it's a proposal. This Benedict strategy. This is what Ladislav, actually what you said. The strategic retreat. From withdrawal, but withdraw, of course, for future victory. But I just wanted to read one sentence. Why he was, because he was skeptical about politicians. There is no political solution to cultural problems. These problems. These cultural problems are in their core spiritual. And this is why actually he thought that it's not what we can do politically. Politics is not first, it's coming after. Culture, a culture is a result of the belief, of the faith. But I think that probably he's wrong in this strategy, because there are many nowadays also proposal. Chantal Delsol, famous French religious philosopher, Catholic philosopher, wrote also the book about post-Christian civilization, and actually repeated this thesis that we should withdraw and build up the communities and so. But he also writes, Saint Benedict preserved the living faith to give a birth to our own civilization amid empire's fall. And one more sentence, tradition is not the worship of ashes, but the preservation of fire. Not worship of ashes, but preservation of fire. And I think this is also our duty of politicians. This is why I do not believe in the retreat of politicians, to preserve the fire, and not to take care of ashes. So I am convinced, maybe you not share my opinion, but also that the future of ECR is that we much more stronger refer to St. Benedict's, but also to our Christian values, but I then say no to our Catholic faith. Yeah, maybe we should change or modify our name. Christian European conservatism and reformism, because there is a Christian democracy now not exist anymore. So I think it would be. And then we had a strong, very strong message, you know, in this also culture, in this Kulturkampf, in this culture war, because we have to win the culture war in order to win the politically. Thank you very much.
Nicola, may I just add 2 sentences? So I completely agree, and what I would like to say that the left is helping us now, because now we speak about post-Christian era, but we can speak post-woke era, you know, because now they promoted this LGBTIQ, gender, change of sex, I don't know, whatever, these green agendas and so on. And now, years after, we see awful results of these social concepts, of these experiments. Now we can speak about post-woke era. And, but still, I have to say, personally, I'm afraid that now there are forces who will prevail because of this, but who will still deny God, deny basic values. You know, we have some parties who will now be against this centralization of Europe as we are. They will be against this crazy Green Deal as we are. But they will go to another extreme again without basic values. So we have a huge responsibility now when these and other concepts show bad results to bring back the normal and fulfilled with values approach. Just this.
May I also? I also would like to add something, because I think that there's a difference between the epoch of St. Benedict and ours, and even, you know, the epoch of 19th century when there was a left, Marxism was born, and let's say 20th century in so-called high modernity or late modernity, like some Giddens and so on, and Giddens calls it, because today they attacked actually fundamentals of our lives. That means there are some that say, okay, transhumanism, you know, this gender thing. This is in this sense it's an expression of all these tendencies, because you see there's also some kinds of despising of body, of embodiment. You know, we can transform our bodies, we can create the people. So it's we are on the age, on the threshold in which the next civilization can be transhuman civilization. So we have to defend now what even socialists, you know, even Vladimir Lenin didn't attack the differences between women and men on the sex marriages. You know, they destroy some fundamental institution which were in our civilization, also already in the epoch of secularization, of industrial revolution. So this is why actually we are also, as a politician, we have now to react, you know, to artificial intelligence, to all this technological innovation. So this is why we cannot be silent and retreat and just wait, you know, that they produce the next generation they produce in California in labors. Yeah,
we can withdraw during Sundays and on meetings like this, you know, to come here.
Thank you, colleagues. Margarita, we are at the end, but if you want to add something.
No, it's a small reflection that it's true that we are facing this level of cultural battle, and maybe it's not because we wanted to promote the Christianity at political level, it's because we are facing a spiritual ingerence of different currents that are affecting our private lives. That's why we have to fight at this level. Professor Pera explained that the conservatives understand that the political have to be taking care just resolving the problems, but not promoting a style of life. But the reality is that now the institution, they have more concern to promote a style of life than to resolve our problems. For example, we are suffering a lot of security problems, and we are not facing this, and we promote LGTB movement. I mean, so it's true that it's not us, the ones that's maybe why we are, sometimes we don't know in which level of the battle we are, because the truth is that it's not a political battle, but the problem is that the institution is committing an ingerence in our private life, coming into our rooms, saying us how we have to live. So that's the problem.
Thank you Margherita, thank you Ladislav, Professor Krasnodievsky, thank you all, grazie a tutti e buon proseguimento. Grazie.
Charter values, okay.
Of the group, I'm going to read just the beginning.
The Benedictine vision, a charter for conservative values. Just the beginning. At the time when the European cultural identity is being challenged by the increasing imposition of liberal progressive ideologies expressed via woke narratives and gender theories, the ECR Group recognizes the need to underscore the enduring principles that have shaped European values throughout history. We gather in Subiaco, a sacred place marked by the spirit of Saint Benedict, the Saint Patron of Europe, to articulate via a charter of values the core tenets that define conservatism, reinforcing our commitment to fostering a stable, just and harmonious community. Sì, grazie. Thank you. Grazie a tutti. Thank you to everybody. If we want to take a photo opportunity all together, please, the colleagues, with me, please. Okay. Maybe yes, but not the real signature. Come? Ah, oppure la stessa possiamo firmare. Yeah, we can put all together. Yeah, sure. All right.